floor meets the wall, and also where the wall meets the ceiling, just kind of break up those lines a little bit. And we can use the geometry that we already have to do this. I'm going to go ahead and select the walls, and these are the editable walls that we have, not the parametric walls. And I go sub-object, and let's go to an edge selection, and let's select the edges to begin with all across the top here. So we're looking at basically the inside edges here of the walls where they meet the ceiling. So we'll go through and just control select all of these different edges, so you end up with a selection that goes all the way around. Okay, basically wherever you want there to be some trim, you're going to select those edges. If you want to have some sort of a gap for some reason, you just don't select those edges. Alright, so now we've got all these edges selected, we can now turn these into a spline. And to do that, we'll go down to our Edit Edges Rollout under Modify, and we'll create Shape from Selection. Okay, we want the shape type to be linear because we want it to kind of match the square shape of the room, not be smoothed out. Go ahead and say OK to that. And what that's done now is created, if I select this, an editable spline that matches those edges. We can now take this spline and very quickly, if we go to the rendering rollout, we can actually add geometry along this spline. So if we enable it in Renderer and Viewport, you can see that there's now actually geometry that is flowing along this spline. Okay, you can change this the type of geometry. We've got radial, we've got rectangular that we're able to add. We can change the thickness. Okay, so something like that, and so that'll give you just kind of a really quick trim. You can go through the process of doing a kind of a loft or a sweep or any of those type of things, but sometimes just turning on this rendering to get some geometry along these curves is kind of the quickest thing to do. You can always convert this to editable poly later, but this gives you kind of a lot of flexibility, and you can change the thickness, you can change the number of sides. So assuming that you want kind of a simple profile, this might be the way to go. Okay, let's go ahead and do the same thing on the bottom here. And just to be able to see this a little bit better, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the floor layer, turn off the visibility for now. When you're creating new objects, one of the things that you do want to be careful of is that you're not accidentally on an invisible layer. So if I'm on this layer and I start creating geometry, it's going to be invisible, and you're going to wonder where it all went. So you want to be careful that you're on a visible layer when you're actually kind of working. So I'm going to go ahead and create another edge selection here. And this time I'll grab these edges along the bottom and just grab these all the way around. And through this little alcove here. And then along the large wall and then under the window. Just grab all of these little edges just along the inside there. We'll skip over the door. It's got a nice hole there for the door. Make sure we get all those edges, and then make our way around to the other side. And I think that should be all of them. You might want to check just the little corners that have the kind of the smaller segments that you might miss. And then we'll also go ahead and make another editable spline out of this. Create shape from selection, linear. OK. And now because we have our rendering turned on, you can see that this has automatically enabled that, and with the same thickness as we have for the top. Okay, so you can see it's still an editable spline. It's not an editable poly at all. You can still move the vertices and select segments and so forth, but now it's got geometry here. If I turn off our hit F4 to turn off edged faces, you can see how that looks. And now if I go into my layers and turn on the floor, you can see that it gives you kind of a nice little trim there to break up the floor. And also on the ceiling, it gives you kind of the same sort of thing. Okay, just kind of breaks up that line a little bit, adds a little bit of finish to the room, so it's not just an edge meeting an edge. Okay, so now that we've got the trim, and you can modify that and play around with some of the settings of the radial and the square, but it's nice to be able to keep those as splines, and you don't have to convert them down or anything like that, although you can at any point that you need to do any sort of manipulating of, cutting out parts of it and so forth. So now that we've got the trim, let's go ahead and move back here, and let's add some steps. So let's say there's kind of a landing here coming down from a door maybe in this side that's raised up, and then maybe there's some steps that come down in a kind of an L shape. Okay, we can do this very quickly, and we'll use some of the same techniques that we used for the walls, that is, using some of our architectural primitives, and you can actually, instead of bringing in windows and doors,